Our presenters tonight are Stacy Dahl and Ann Winkus, and they are just superb people to take us on this tour. Stacy is the Trust's Volunteer and Education Programs Coordinator. She has a master's in biology, and before joining the Trust was an environmental educator on public lands. On top of her numerous duties here at the Land Trust, she has been coordinating our volunteer community science projects at the March Point Heronry, including the active nest tree and heron nest counts, which are done annually. Those are two different things. They actually look for the nests that the herons used, and then they count the nests in the trees. And we've been doing that for a super long time. 2 years ago, Stacy took on the terrifically complex project of coordinating this heron camera, which was way further and deeper and bigger than any of us first imagined. You'll see why. The quality is amazing, but it did take some effort to get it in. Since then, she has been training the volunteer camera monitors and overseeing 3 teams who are participating in a pilot heron camera monitoring project this year. And I know that if this is something you'd like to be involved in the future, Stacy will let you know how you can sign on for future volunteer time. Ann Winkus is a board member of the Trust and has been chair of a public policy committee for the last 2 years, and is also a key leader and advocate for all things to do with great blue herons. In 2013, Ann took a training from renowned heron biologist Ann Eisinger on how to gather data of the herons throughout the nesting season. The goal for Ann Eisinger's training was to provide data that allowed us at Skagit Land Trust and our volunteers to evaluate the reproductive health of the heronries located on our conservation areas. At that time, we had 3, Barney Lake, Samish Island, and the March Point Heronry. Ann monitored and observed the Samish Island Heronry with Ann Middleton until it abandoned in June of 2017. At that same time, Jim and Levy Sheltons were observing the March Point Heronry, and we had one camera in the heronry way up a tree. It was a fine quality, but it wasn't exceptional. And they were able to, it was beamed across to Padilla Bay, and they were able to watch herons on that footage, which really helped them observe the heronry. But that camera broke down, and in 2019, Ann Sualer and Shirley Ho began monitoring March Point, but with all observations from outside the heronry, as the camera was no longer working. So they were very excited to hear we were going to get this camera because their necks were getting sore. That's a lot of looking up, and they will discuss what they did. It's pretty amazing. Ann also was deeply involved with public policy and advocating for local policy and regulations that educate on how to protect habitat for nesting herons and foraging herons. And she is often called one of the heron's best friends here in the Skagit. Next slide. So a little bit about why a camera in the heronry. 20 years ago, when I first became the executive director of Skagit Land Trust, this nationally significant heronry, which is critical to the health of all the herons in the Salish Sea, was threatened, mostly because no one knew it was there or really understood anything about what nesting herons require to be successful. A large industrial plant had been permitted to be built right up against the heronry on the top of the hill where the herons were nesting. And they had done the filling grade permit to put a road to run up to start the construction. The Land Trust, along with other organizations such as Audubon and Evergreen Islands, were able to get the situation stopped and resolved. We now enjoy a great relationship with our neighbor, T. Bailey, who was the industrial neighbor. And this picture is from some time ago. They actually built at the bottom of the hill with all of their equipment facing away. If you drive by T. Bailey today, notice that all their doors face north. None of them face towards the heronry. They have restrictions on when they do certain things that are closer to the heronry. They did all their large construction out of the heron nesting season. So they built down below, and in the end, they also donated a conservation easement on the land that's up on the hill where they were going to build their building, and that now has a conservation easement on it for heron habitat. So it was a great partnership in the end. But this was a real wake-up call for Skagit Land Trust because we own and manage the land that the March Point Heronry sits on. And we knew that we couldn't, in other areas, we might just buy everything around it and create a buffer, right, to buffer the herons. Well, look where this is sitting, in the middle of the industrial area of Anacortes. We couldn't do that. And we knew we needed to protect the heronry in another way, which was to educate people that it was there, how important it was, and how to live alongside it peacefully. So our first camera was called the Iron Heronry, and today you're going to be hearing about and see how the Heronry camera has evolved, and it is great. So thanks so much for your help, and Anne is going to walk us through all things herons.
Hi, everybody. So glad that you are all here with us today. This photo is so much fun. I decided I just had to share it with you this evening. It was taken by Sue Ayler, who has monitored the March Point Heronry along with me and Shirley Ho throughout the breeding and nesting season since the spring of 2019. The March Point Heronry is extraordinary. With close to 700 nests, it is the largest heronry on the west coast of the United States. Its location is extraordinary in a mature coastal forest with trees tall enough and strong enough to support multiple heron nests 150 feet above the forest floor. And right next door is Padilla Bay. You're looking here at a huge area of eelgrass at low tide in Padilla Bay. When the water is in, the eelgrass floats up and is home for the nutrient-rich forage fish on which the heron and their young thrive. March Point herons are particularly shy of humans. They have always flushed from their nests, squawking loudly whenever humans come near. Knowing their shyness, I wasn't surprised when one of my first views with the North camera was this one. Because of their sensitivity, up until this spring, all monitoring of the heronry by the Trust community science volunteers during the breeding and nesting season has been done from outside of the heronry. We look with binoculars and with a spotting scope, standing on a gravel pullout across from T. Bailey. We peer upward from the side of South March Point Road. We also listen very carefully from the road when trucks aren't barreling by for the first peeps of newly hatched chicks. Up until this year, that was the only way to learn when hatching had begun. Now, the audio feed from the heronry will allow all of us to know exactly when to hold one huge birthday party. Our third viewing spot is from the site of the March Point landfill, directly across the road from the heronry. We look to the edge of the heronry, noting nests. We record flight patterns in and out of the heronry. We look at nearby foraging. We use different viewing sites as each allows us a unique look at what the herons are up to and allows us to see any environmental disturbances coming from outside the heronry. A couple of years ago, we saw markings on the road indicating areas adjacent to the heronry where road grinding and patching were to take place. Fortunately, we were able to get those repairs delayed until after the herons had left that year. This year, we've added to our outside monitoring views from inside the heronry of the 147 nests currently visible with the north-facing camera. We watch from our homes, as do other volunteers who are recording data from the east and west-facing cameras. This is Tu, yet another heron friend, a pal of Sue's, peeking into the heronry from her home. At March Point, the herons build their nests high up in firs, cedars, maples, and alders. Herons usually nest close together, arranging their nests along a horizontal plane, as you can see in the tree on the right, or apartment style, one nest above the other, as you can see in the tree on the left. I didn't fully appreciate how close together the nests are until I took a look through the video cam. One above the other, apartment style on the right and in the center, horizontally placed on the left. Pretty crowded, aren't they? And this is Courtship with a neighbor close by. Nests are constructed of sticks about a foot long and the thickness of a pencil. They are reinforced with twigs when eggs are laid and at hatching. Last year, 1 week before we first heard chick sounds, we observed 108 herons fly to the woods on the hill immediately to the west of T-Bailey, and 51 herons fly back from there into the heronry carrying sticks. The timing suggests that the herons were reinforcing their nests synchronous with hatching. Such nest reinforcement is vital as heron young grow from approximately 2 ounces at hatching to almost the size of an adult heron at fledging 2 months later. Herons' breeding and nesting season follows a known and usually predictable sequence. As we monitor, we are watching for any unexpected changes in or any threats to that sequence. This year and in seasons past, the herons at March Point gather outside of the heronry for a week or so before entering the heronry to breed and nest. They'll gather in increasing numbers on the fill islands, as you could see in the previous photo, or along the railroad tracks. This year, we counted 140 on the railroad tracks on March 4th, the same day they re-entered the heronry to begin breeding and nesting. The males enter the heronry first, select nests, most often using already established nests, and wait for the females. This is a male in full advertising display with his lower neck, scapular, and back feathers erect, his bill a bright orange, announcing this is his nest. Pairing takes place over a week or so. From the ground, 2 heron on a nest tell us pairing has occurred. With the camera, we're able to see the courtship rituals continuing even after the female has begun to lay eggs. I was able to capture segments of a courtship sequence while watching the north camera on March 30th. Here's the pair just hanging out with their single egg. Here they are, 41 seconds later, wing preening simultaneously. 10 minutes later, a courtship display has begun. Low neck, scapular, back, and head feathers are erect. Bills are bright orange. One rapidly chatters its bill at the other. Now the other chatters back. 20 seconds later, they are bill dueling. The female grabs the male's bill and holds on until he gives in and allows her to remain on his nest. Eggs are laid asynchronously over about a week. 1 egg, then a day or 2 later, another, until typically 3 to 5 eggs have been laid. During incubation, the incubating heron, and it might be a male or a female, they take turns, stands up about every hour or so, turns around, may turn the eggs, and then sits back down. This is an egg tending sequence I captured from the north camera on April 2nd of a heron tending 5 eggs. Moving the eggs, done with one, on to the next, and another, just about done, And now back to incubating. Incubation lasts 4 weeks. From afar, we look for a low set heron profile to show us that incubation is occurring. Sometimes we'll just see the tip of a yellow bill poking above the rim of the nest or lying on the rim of the nest. This is what it looks like with the heron cam. The new audio feed will let us know right when hatching begins this year. Try as we might from the road, we probably miss hearing the earliest hatchers. Because the eggs are laid asynchronously, hatching occurs asynchronously. This slide and the chick slides that follow were taken with the old March Point Heron cam. We'll all get to see this year's chicks hatch over the next few weeks. 2 of the nests we observe with a north camera have already hatched. When we enter the heronry after all the herons have departed, we find eggshells on the forest floor. The adult herons are tidy nest keepers and toss the shells from the nest, something I hope we'll be able to see as we watch the video cams. Newly hatched great blue heron chicks are mostly naked with just a bit of fluffy down. They weigh less than 2 ounces, about the same weight as 2 slices of white sandwich bread. Because the chicks are unable to regulate their own temperatures, one of the adult pair stays with them until they are about 3 or 4 weeks old, providing warmth and protection from predators. Bald eagles eat baby herons, as well as heron eggs and the occasional adult. For about a month following the hatching of the chicks, we hear from the road the horrendous cries of distressed herons as the eagles invade the heronry. From the road, we'll hear the sound of eagle chat, followed by this. The sound of distressed herons. It is common for maybe you could back the slide up one, Laura. It is common for a pair of bald eagles to nest in a heronry, and March Point is no exception. It has 2 eagle nests, in one of which they're raising young this season. You'll be able to see it from the video cam. This is what it looks like from the road. This year's active nest is on the left with a bald eagle perched above it. Though the nesting eagles eat heron young, the herons also benefit when a pair of eagles nests in the heronry. Nesting eagles defend their territory, driving away other eagles, thus minimizing the number of eagles feasting in the heronry. The herons and the eagles have an interesting relationship. This photo is something you won't see from the heron cam. When the herons aren't defending their young from the bald eagles, we often see herons and eagles roosting together on the treetops at March Point. This photo taken by Shirley Ho last year shows the eagle perched above his nest and 7 heron just hanging out on the neighboring snag. They look pretty companionable, don't they? Adult herons stand about 4 feet tall and weigh about 5 pounds. Their wingspan is 6 feet. Heron chicks grow very rapidly, reaching very close to adult size by 2 months of age. So they're growing from 2 ounces to almost 5 pounds. That kind of growth requires a lot of calories. So starting around 4 weeks of age, both adults head out to forage. On their return, this is what greets them. noisy critters. You'll be able to hear them well on the audio cam. When the chicks are young, the adults feed them by regurgitating food to the bottom of the nest. As the chicks get older, they grasp and yank at the adult's bill, demanding to be fed. As the heron mature, even from the road, we are able to see them standing on the nests. Close up, here's what they look like. These two are about a month and a half old. Young herons are very aggressive at this age, fighting with one another, trying to be the first to get the food. Sometimes one is actually shoved from the nest. When their young are this age, understandably, the adults aren't around the nest much unless it's feeding time. We see them hanging out at the top of the trees, far away from the nests. While their parents are away, the young are hopping along the branches, flapping their wings to gain strength for flying. These two are learning to fly. The one on the left getting ready to take off, the one on the right returning back home. Once they master flying, the heron are ready to fledge or leave the nests for good. That happens when they're 2 months old. From the road, we know that all the young have fledged when there is absolute silence from the heronry. At that point, the fledglings are on their own, learning to forage by modeling the adult's behavior. They won't be back in the heronry again until the following spring. But look carefully and you'll see them foraging with some of their newfound friends. And if you look really carefully when the river floods next winter, you may be lucky and even find one hanging out with a four-legged pal. Now, Stacy, can you tell us about the cameras we're going to see?
So Anne gave a lovely story about the heronry and the things that we'll be able to see with the cameras, but I wanted to just take a little bit of time and talk about how we got to this point. Molly mentioned that the original Heron camera was installed in 2006 as a project with Leadership Skagit. And we spent many years looking through that one camera. We updated it in 2014. And we're able to look at about 26 nests with the one camera. Now, in 2017, Jim and Levy Sheltons, who were the land stewards at March Point, observed through the camera at Padilla Bay at the Estuarine Center, and they were able to see 26 nests with that one camera. But that same year, our nest count counted 611 nests. So this was just a really small fraction of the nests that we knew we could see in the heronry. So when it came time to update our cameras, we considered using 3 different cameras. We worked with Ann Eisinger, a wildlife biologist who's very knowledgeable about herons. And she suggested that perhaps we use 3 cameras because that would allow us to see perhaps a third of the colony. And by doing so, we would get a really good sense of how productive that heronry was. So with the cameras in mind, we worked with Rob Walters of Horizon Audio Visual to come up with cameras that gave us really good image quality, had the ability to provide infrared, and the ability to live stream, because we wanted to be sure that not only could we share the camera views with everybody in the public, but we could also allow what we were anticipating would be a team of Heron camera operators who could help us do the monitoring. And we especially wanted to be able to hear within the heronry as well, because sometimes that gives us clues to activity that's happening that we can't really see with just one camera at a time. So with the 3 cameras and the really good quality cameras, how are we going to power the system. We worked with Fire Mountain Solar to develop a system of 9 panels, and that would provide us really good power with batteries to collect as much solar as we needed during the particularly dark times at the beginning of the Heron period of time. So once we determined our cameras and our powers, we needed to also take a really good look at how we were going to install this system. We wanted to be sure that we were considering the herons as a protected animal. So we needed to be sure that the solar system was in a place that was not obstructive to the birds. So where we placed it was somewhat close to the Highway 20. So we needed to be sure that we had permission and the ability to do that. We found in that particular place, the best place for the solar array, that there were trees that we needed to take down. They were dead trees. And so we needed a forest practice permit, or we needed to look into a forest practice permit. Fortunately, we did not need that. We also need to consider the proximity to the eagle nest. We had to go through the eagle permit recommendation tool to determine whether or not our project could go forward. And then finally, we needed a Skagit County building permit and a critical area review along with that. For a freestanding solar system such as we had, we needed to go through the complete process, and it took quite a long time. But finally, we got the permit in December of last year. While we were waiting for it, we needed to prepare the site. March Point is covered with lots of stinging nettles and lots of understory, so we needed to create a trail to the solar site from the area we were going to be able to access through T. Bailey. And we also needed to take some of the dead trees down, as I mentioned earlier. So we used volunteers, we used some good people like Dan Olson of Olson Tree Service to help us. And here are some of the many volunteers that helped us. We'd like to show you a little video of some of this process. These are 45, 50-pound bags of cement that our volunteers are carrying up this 50-foot slope from T. Bailey property. This is a very heavy metal container to store the solar batteries and the camera equipment within it. Again, quite an elaborate process to get this up that slope and down the trail. We also had 9 solar panels and 3 127-pound solar batteries that we had to carry. So quite a long process to do that. Once we had all the equipment, we needed to do the camera installation. And this was a 2-day process to install 3 cameras and the microphone that would beam the audio across. And so this is Tom Otto from Canopy Conservation. And I'm going to show you a little bit of video of Tom shooting his string across a branch that he hopes is going to hold him. That string will pull up a heavier rope that he's going to really depend on in order to climb up that 100-foot tree all the way at the top. And then once he's up there, he had to pull the camera up behind him and attach it to the tree. So as you can imagine, this was happening after December 21st and before the heron returned to the colony. We anticipated sometime late in February. So we encountered lots of rain and lots of snow. However, we were able to get it done all by the end of January of this year. And after it was all installed, we've trained 3 different camera crews to begin monitoring the system and doing observations throughout the whole Heronry system. And so at this time, I'm really pleased to be able to share views through the cameras. So what you're looking at here is through our west camera, gives you a little bit of an overview of some of the nests that we have at the Heronry. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So you can see how far away from those nests the camera truly is. And I will zoom in again. So you can get a sense of how close we can get. And what's interesting with these camera operations is that sometimes they go really fast and sometimes they go really slow, and we never really know what we're going to encounter. Let me zoom on to this bird. And Anne, if you're there and would like to describe some of the things that we're seeing as well, that would be great.
So the heron we're looking at now is in an interesting position. It is not as low as you would expect it to be if it were incubating on eggs. I'm not familiar with this nest, but it makes me wonder the way it's kind of raised up a little bit, if maybe there have been some chicks that have hatched there.
Let me go to another camera. And how would you compare that nest?
Well, it seems to be a very substantial nest. And I believe I recognize this nest, and it is a heron that was hatched, the first chicks that we saw this season. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but that looks like that nest to me. She started out with 3 chicks, and when I last looked on Sunday or Monday, she was down to just 1 chick. But they're fun to watch when I didn't really realize what they looked like when they were keeping their chicks warm, and they adjust their body. I had this sense, gosh, do those chicks kind of tickle them when they're moving around underneath? And I don't know if we'll see her do this, but they kind of lift their feathers up a little bit and put them back down. And if we're lucky tonight, maybe there's another nest that has chicks too. So if we're lucky tonight, maybe we will have one of these adults stand up and give us a look.
Okay.
And so you said she started out with 3. How many chicks? What's the average number of chicks that survive?
Well, in a healthy heronry, the number that is considered to be a heronry in which reproduction is doing what it should be is 2.5. I don't know how a half of a chick is healthy, but that's the number they come up with.
Oh,
and
night. Okay, so 2.5. So she's low.
Yeah, so she's low, but there are almost 700 nests in there, so it may all average out.
Yep.
When I was observing at Samish Heronry, we actually saw a couple of nests where the heron successfully fledged 5 5 young, which is pretty extraordinary. More common is 1 or 2. When you look at the nest, and I think Stacy's going to show us some of them, you'll be amazed at the different shapes and sizes. So some are very small, some are flat, some are really deep, some are very large. When I was out observing at the Heronry last week, we actually looked up from the road and saw what looked like a nest. And this one is lifting up her feathers now. So if we keep watching, maybe she'll show us. But we saw a nest, and it had, the herons were actually building it, and it had just all the sticks laid in one direction. And as we watched, they were bringing in more sticks, and we're going to begin doing the kind of cross weave that they do to make these nests. I've actually looked at this one here. I think, is that nest 12?
This is nest 7. Would you like to
7.
see nest 12?
Yeah, nest
Okay.
12 has 3 chicks. And so maybe if she'll give us a look. It was quite interesting to me because I looked at these chicks yesterday, and they actually, I had seen the very first ones on Sunday. I looked yesterday, and they were fighting with one another already. And I thought, oh my goodness, this starts really early. It doesn't really just wait till they are big enough to push the other one out of the nest. She
So
looks pretty.
One thing this is showing off, this is Laura, is so Stacy we've preset the different nests that we want to monitor. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the process of how you go through to monitor all these nests. And I also want to welcome anybody out there. You can turn on your camera, your audio, ask a question, put a question in chat, and we can bring that up to Anne and Stacy.
So would you like me to talk about how we do the monitoring? Okay. So our North team had so many nests to look at that after we all did it once, we decided we were totally exhausted and would have to divide them in half at each viewing. And we, each of the nests, Stacy really focused the cameras well on them and has them numbered. And as you can, if you look at the side of what you can see on the screen, you can see it says preset, and below that it is a number 7. So if I were looking at this nest, and what I do is I start with number 1 and I go through numerically until I reach the 86th nest. And I watch it as long as I need to watch it to determine if there's a heron using that nest, if there are any eggs in that nest, if there's courtship, what kind of behavior I'm seeing. And so I would, and it looks like Stacy's moving the camera up and down. So sometimes the camera won't be totally focused on a nest, and then we can move it up and down to bring it into better focus. And then at the end of our observations, we will have recorded everything that we have seen. And what we found is that it's really helpful if we share information about what we've seen. About how many chicks we've seen, what nests they're in, if we're having difficulties in any way with focusing. That's a great zoom in there. And this, and the other thing we can also do, which has been fun, is we can take a photo of the nest if there's something we want to capture with it. So that's how I was able to do the sequences that you saw earlier in the presentation.
Now, Stacy, when you zoom way back, I think one time before you showed us how this is actually attached to the tree, and that the camera can actually pivot 360 degrees around, correct?
That's right. So I'm going all the way around, and here's the actual attachment to the tree. And then with the cords that go down and run to the solar panel.
So pretty amazing, 100+ feet up in the air and swinging around on a little metal arm over the Heronry. Does anyone have any questions out there that they wanted to know about the Heronry? Oh, it looks like Stacy's zeroing in on the eagle's nest.
Yeah, and I saw an adult sitting in there earlier today, but can't quite see its head right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we're looking from the road, we will look at it over maybe a half-hour period of time, and we'll think, oh, the eagles aren't there. We start wondering if something happened. And then all of a sudden, this eagle head rises up above the rim. So you never know when they're going to make an appearance.
Laura, how will people at home be able to see this? What will they be seeing very soon when it's live online?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're going to be live streaming this through actually YouTube. We're setting up, YouTube has the option for doing live stream feeds. So we'll have all 3 cameras. Is that correct, Stacy? You can nod if that's right.
Yes, all 3 cameras and the audio camera also.
So those are going to be, we'll be adding something to the main page of the website. So you'll be able to see one of our top news stories when you just go to skagitlandtrust.org. Will be our March Point Heron camera. When you click on that page, you'll see all 3 feeds will be embedded into the page. So you could decide which one you'd like to watch. And as Anne said, after they're the ones that are controlling the cameras as they're doing the observations. And whenever they finish their shift, they try to make sure the camera is refocused on a nest like this one is, so that you could watch that at any time.
So will people, when they log on, they'll see whatever the monitor is watching. So if Anne is going through 1 through whatever she said, 84, they'll be going along with Anne watching 1 through 84.
They certainly will. I know that the community science monitors, they have many different times throughout the day. So you're never sure what you might see when you tune into the Heron camera system. It could be moving around, it could be static and focused on a specific nest. But we hope to have that. We're trying to get all the live streams running through YouTube, and we hope to have that up by the end of the month. We'll be sending out an email. We'll announce it in our e-news as soon as we have that available.
And I think it'll be amazing what we'll see as the season progresses. So right now, this is mostly incubation that you're looking at. But once the chicks have hatched, you'll be able to see feeding happen as they drop fish into the nest. Sue Ayler actually caught a feeding taking place in one of the nests yesterday morning and counted 12 little fish that the adult had dropped into the bottom of the nest. So that chick was well fed. I think, we'll also be able to see predation happening, which I have never seen. I've only heard it. So I think that may be a little bit disturbing to us. And then we'll get the wonderful experience of seeing the young ones as they grow, hopping from branch to branch and really learning how to fly. And they're absolutely charming. If you've never seen a adolescent heron, they look just like a teenager.
And I loved your description that as they sort of became in the teenager mode, their parents abandoned the nest and are sitting in the trees.
They really do. They
staying
really
away from home.
We'll feed you, but then you're on your own.
But that was funny. All right. Do we have any more questions?
Yes, somebody mentioned that these cameras have infrared capability. I'm wondering if so, how has that been working out in terms of night vision?
We haven't actually looked at night, I don't think. Have you, has your team, Anne?
I have not looked at night. Sue Ayler got a great photo the other night of the heron nest. Stay on this camera, maybe you'll see something down there. I mean, on this nest. She had a wonderful photo of the eagle nest with stars behind it, and it was taken not with the infrared light, but just with the, oh, she's got, you can see a blue egg there, and she has chicks. So if, and she's doing some tending of some sort, the eggshell is right in the center of this view. They're blue. She's.
And how can you see they have she has chicks? Where do you see that?
Because if you look right, yeah, well, Stacy's pointing at it, I think. Is that you pointing there, Stacy?
Yeah, it is.
And if they'll get to moving around, you'll be able to tell better.
Stacy, can you make it so it's the whole screen? Is that possible?
I don't know if she can and still
Okay.
her controls.
Oh, is that right?
And you can see this kind of this little rocking back and forth they do. It just looks so nurturing to me every time I've seen that. And they all do it as they go back down on their chicks.
Oh,
Oh, what's happening there?
let's see. There's a chick there underneath mom. Do you see?
There it is. Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah. And it's even moving around a little bit for us.
What's amazing is the quality of the video. It was how far it's come from 2006 to this. I think the old video, it would be 3 or 4 seconds, it seemed like, between each image. So it's a much clearer view inside the heronry, and to see how they move about. Oh my God.
That's a great view of that chick. I think that chick's probably about a week old or so. Mama has to, or maybe it's Papa has to, oh, look at that mouth.
That's most of what I want to eat. Look at that hairdo. What nest is this one? Can we, when we're looking, do we know what nest this is when we look?
7, right?
This is 7, yeah.
Oh, I see. So we'll see that when we go on YouTube. It'll tell us nest 7.
It doesn't tell, it only tells you right when you first click on it. So on the left upper side of the screen, it'll say, like this one would say N7. And I guess the other way you could know is if you just look over to the right side where all the numbers are under preset, it's telling us it's nest 7.
So is this one that there were multiple chicks and we're down to the 1 chick?
Yes. this had 3 chicks, and Stacy, I believe, saw it when it had 3 chicks and 1 egg remaining in the nest. So the egg is gone and 2 of the chicks. But this one seems to be doing great.
So if any of us who are like really fascinated by this want to send something that we saw that was unusual, should we send it to Stacy?
Yeah, that would be great.
I think someone was trying to speak.
Yeah, Limo John here again. I was wondering if your audio is active at this point, and if so, how many microphones and how are they placed?
Let me see if I can get the audio going. We just have one audio, and that is a camera that's placed at the base of one of the camera trees. So it gives us a really good sense of what's happening.
So Anne, you said this chick is probably about a week and a half old?
Yeah. And it's grown considerably since we first saw it when it looked just like this little teeny ball of fluff. Do you remember what day we actually spotted it that first time, Stacy?
Well, it was when we were preparing for this presentation, right? So like
Maybe the 19th or 20th.
19th, yeah.
Yeah, so about a week old. And that mom will, I shouldn't keep calling them moms, that adult or its partner will stay with it until it's close to 4 weeks old.
Crazy to think that in 2 months, it'll be almost the size of the adult heron that's towering above it.
Yeah, it is just remarkable. It's interesting if you watch the flight patterns at this stage of the nesting season when they're just starting to hatch, you'll see just single herons flying out of the heronry to forage. But once these chicks have reached around 4 weeks of age, the herons then start out or fly out to forage in large groups, and we'll see what's called nest exchanges, where as the ones that have been out foraging return to the heronry, the others who have been feeding head out. And there are times when we've counted 100 herons in a group flying out of the heronry together as the others are coming back in.
And is that beautiful plumage just for the breeding?
Well, they always have some breast plumes, but they get longer, during the breeding period, and they really display with them. So part of all of their displays for breeding are making those plumes more erect away from their body. But they'll have plumes even if you look at them in the wintertime. If you look at the herons that are standing so still out in the fields waiting for voles, they'll have the plumes. They're just not as dramatic. And the change of the bill color when they're breeding, it does turn. Hers doesn't look like this now, which is what you would expect because she's a month past breeding. But when they're breeding, they're bright orange, and that is hormonally apparently regulated. And there is a researcher in British Columbia who describes watching a nest. The breeding has taken place, the bills have started to fade, the nest gets disturbed, and the heron leave 2 weeks later, they come back again to restart the nest, rebreed, and the bills have turned that bright orange color again. And it's fascinating to see that.
Laura, we're at 6:30, little
We-
past.
We are, if this is all of the questions that we have, we can probably wrap up tonight, though I think we could maybe sit here for hours and watch this very cute little chick.
We actually have decided, our team has decided that we all may need to start a group to treat our heron viewing addiction. It really is fun.
But we want to thank everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, you can email Stacy. That's stacyd@skagitlandtrust.org. Like I said, we'll be having our feed hopefully on the main page of the website by the end of the month. If anybody has any last questions, feel free to turn on your camera and ask them. Or if not, I hope you all have a lovely evening, and thank you to the many members who have joined this evening for all your support.